to start at the very beginning, I believe that my mother was involved in an accident shortly before I was born, with the result that I was born 2 months prematurely, and I weighed only 3 pounds.
Oh.
Consequently, my mother became very, very protective, and I seemed to spend much of my early years in the doctor's surgery. When I was 6, the doctor said to her, "Does he like music?" My mother said, "Oh God, yes, yes, when the wildness is on you can't keep him still." So the doctor said, "Right, that's the answer, dancing lessons." Well, we didn't know anything about dancing schools, so my mother spoke to my grandmother, who had a friend who worked for a dancing school. In fact, she was the school's cleaner, but that was a school we could be introduced to. So I was enrolled in tap classes. So every Saturday morning I would go along for an hour, or be taken along for an hour, and learn tap dancing. After a while, it was suggested that I showed a marked advantage and
Capability.
I was capable of the work, and ballet could help. So then I had to take ballet lessons as well for an hour. I was the only boy in the school, so they picked a little out-of-the-way room where I could learn my ballet. It was actually used for ballroom classes, but really it was just me there. So I was taught by one of the senior students, and after a while examinations were being mentioned. That meant I had to go upstairs. Well, upstairs meant Miss Tweedy, and Miss Tweedy was Miss Tweedy. She was the boss, and I was petrified. Years before, there was a Danish ballerina called Adeline Jenny. And Adeline Jenny lived in this country, and she started to form a little group that would help teachers and schools. She created examinations for the pupils to take so that their abilities could be judged. When I was taking my first major examination, major examinations had to be taken in 4s. So I went in with 3 girls. Also had to have 2 examiners. My 2 examiners were Adeline Jenny herself and Phyllis Bedell's. So I was standing at the bar. We'd been asked to do the exercise développé à la seconde, which means that you're standing with both legs together. Your working leg, you draw up against your supporting leg, and once you get to the knee, you then take your leg out so it's held sideways at waist height. I'd done it. I'm struggling to keep my leg straight, when suddenly Adeline Jenny called out, "Number 4, straighten your leg." Now, it was strictly against the rules to give corrections during the examination, but she was the boss, so she got away with it. "Number 4, get that leg straight." I struggled to straighten it. Eventually, Phyllis Bedell's got out of her chair, crossed the room, got hold of my leg, forced it up, pulled it, banged it, and then she said, "His leg is straight, madam. He's just got rather large kneecaps." So my report said that I'd passed the exam, and in the remarks it said, "Legs deformed by nature." Mother was not pleased. When I was reaching the age for school certificate, my parents decided it might be an idea if I gave up dancing for a while so that I could concentrate on my schoolwork. it was not my top subject. So that was that. It seems that I started to show withdrawal symptoms, so it was decided I should go back to dancing class. When I got back, I found that the school was heavily involved with preparations for the TAP exams. So I thought, right, I've got to take an exam. Well, the TAP teacher looked at me and said, you can't take the exam. You've been away for far too long. You'll be rubbish. All your technique will have gone. You let the school down. No way. Well, I was determined. So eventually she gave in and let me take it. I took the exam with 3 girls. Afterwards, I went into the boys' changing room. It was actually the school kitchen. So I was there, I got changed. The door opened, in came my teacher with the 3 girls. She closed the door and turned the key so that we wouldn't get disturbed. And she turned to me and said, well, I hope you're satisfied. I told you you would let the school down, and you did. I hope you're ashamed of yourself. And with that, she lifted up her skirt, put a hand down inside her knickers and pulled out all the reports. She handed me mine. I looked at it. It said that not only had I passed the exam, I'd passed the exam with honours. And I'd only been beaten to the top place in the entire school by half a mark. And so when I looked at her, she was grinning from ear to ear. And she said, well, I hope you're satisfied. Now you know that in future, don't you ever double dare ever take any notice of anything I have to say to you. And with that, she opened the door and walked out. Later, a show came to Manchester where I lived. It was called Follow the Girls, and it starred the comedian Arthur Askey. In it was a young lady called Wendy Toy. Wendy had been discovered as a 12-year-old by some big impresario who'd made her into a star. She was now a very grown-up young lady who was playing the principal dancing part in this show. She was also a friend of my teacher's. So she came into the school to say hello. She said that she was only going to be in the show for 6 months, and then she would be leaving to go into production. She was going to direct a new show. My name had been mentioned, and so she added, when I'm auditioning, send him down to see me and I'll see what he's like. And that was that. 6 months later, I received a message to say that I had to come to London to audition for Wendy Toy. Well, there was no way that my parents were going to allow me as a 16-year-old to come down to the big city. So my father came with me. We found the Palace Theatre in Charing Cross Road, and he waited at the stage door while I went inside. The place was absolutely crowded. Charles Cochrane was renowned for his Cochrane young ladies, and backstage was full of these young, tall, elegant, beautiful young women who were all trying to become Cochrane young ladies. Then a voice from the auditorium shouted out, is Arthur there? Arthur from Manchester? I said, yes, I'm here. He said, right, come on, let's see what you can do. So I went onto the stage, gave the pianist my music and went into my routine. Afterwards they said, thank you very much, we'll be in touch. And that was that. So I went out and joined my father, and we walked down to Leicester Square. We found ourselves outside the Wilman cinema. The film at that time was Rhapsody in Blue, telling the life story of George Gershwin. There were no pictures, no posters, nothing to advertise the film, except that the entire cinema had been wrapped up in delicate blue fabric, which fluttered in the breeze. I'd never seen a cinema before which had been gift wrapped, but this one was, and something you never forget once you've seen it. So we went home, and I waited for the postman. Wendy Toy had said she would write to me, or said that she would be in touch with me. We didn't have a telephone, so that meant a letter. So where was it? At the end of a week, with no letter, I was convinced that the post office had lost it. And the only way to find out what she'd said was to come back down to London, go to the theatre where she was appearing, and ask her. I had a friend who was the same age. He was 3 weeks older than me. And he was also a dancer. So he said he'd come with me. Because there were two of us, there were no objections from the family. We would look after each other. So we came down to London. We found our way to His Majesty's Theatre. And I went in and said to the stage doorkeeper, "I'd like to see Miss Toy, please." He said, "You can't, she's not here." I said, "But it's important, I must see her." "You can't, she's not here, she's left the show, she's gone away, she's not here anymore." And that was the end of that. We had to leave the theatre and decide what we were going to do next. Opposite the stage door there was an alley that went all the way up to Jermyn Street. So we were walking up that when I suddenly saw a man coming towards us. And I recognised him as the dancing partner of Wendy Toy. I said to George, I said, "He'll know where she is, he danced with her. I'm going to ask him." So I stopped him. I said, "Excuse me, I wonder if you can help me. I'm trying to see Wendy Toy, but they tell me she's left the show." So he said, "Why do you want to see her?" So I told him about the auditions and about she was going to get in touch with me and the post office must have lost the letter. And that was that. So he said, "Well, I can't tell you where she lives, but would you like to dance for me?" I said, "If you like." He said, "I'm the choreographer for the show. My name's Jack Billings." So I said, "Fine." He said, "I can't see you at the moment, I've got the matinee to do. But come and see me when the show's finished and I'll see what you can do." So George and I went off to the cinema. We went to see The Diary of a Chambermaid starring Paulette Goddard. When it was finished, we came out and we went down to the theatre. Jack was there. He had two ladies with him. One of them was his wife, who was also in the show with him. And the other one was Dorothy McCausland, who was the chief ballet mistress for the entire Jack Hilton organisation. I went onto the stage, did my bit. Then Jack came up and said, "What about your friend? Does he want to dance?" I said, "I don't know, we haven't talked about it." He said, "Well, go and ask him." So I did. I went to the stage door, spoke to George. I said, "He wants to know if you want to dance." And George said, "I can't, I've got no shoes." Well, fortunately, we were the same size. So he put my shoes on and he went on the stage and did it. Though we talked about dancing yours, I'd never actually seen him do it. So while I stood in the wings and watched him, I realised he was really quite good. When he finished, Jack got us both together and said, "Right, I can't offer you anything, not in this show, but I want you to go home and give me a few days to think. I've got a bit of an idea at the back of my mind. Let me get it sorted out and I'll write to you. And I will write to you." So we went off home and waited. At the end of a week, we both got letters from Jack. He said that he'd got this idea of teaming us with a third boy and creating an act around us. We would be under contract to him for 3 years, and at the end of that time, the act would be given to us to do with whatever we wished. In the meantime, we would be paid £6 a week each. Well, I was working in an office that was attached to the post office, and I was earning £1.12 and 6 a week. So £6 a week, I was going to be a millionaire. So we both came down. We were introduced to Eric. I never did find out how old Eric was, but I know he was slightly older than we were. We were 16. He would be about 20, possibly 22. He wasn't old. Anyway, Jack started and he created the act around us. Basically, there were 3 numbers. One was a top hat and cane number. The second one was a chair number where we sat down and we danced around the chair, we danced over the chair, we danced on the chair. And then the last one was a table routine where we all jumped onto the table, which had been specially made for us, and challenged each other to more difficult steps. It ended with all 3 of us on the table together. We would jump off, land in the splits as the curtain closed in front of us. Finished. The act was very, very successful. We were told that we were going to open in Brighton and that we were going to spend the summer season in Ayr in Scotland. And there the programme would change every 2 weeks. And so we had a lot more work to do with preparing routines to take up with us. Oh, and by the way, we were to be called the 3 Barons. Well, the 3 Barons opened in Brighton was a little backstreet theatre, which was out of the way where nobody would ever see us. It meant that we could make a complete mess of it and nobody would ever know. Well, we didn't make a mess of it, we were quite successful. Then we played the Granada Cinema in East Ham. That was what they called Cine Variety. It was 4 variety acts accompanied by the theatre organ, followed by the main film. And then we did a week at Hackney Empire, and then a week at Shepherd's Bush Empire, and then straight up to Scotland, to the Gaiety Theatre in Ayr. Ayr is a small, little seaside resort. The people who live there are all theatre-minded, and everywhere we went we would be stopped in the street from people who'd seen the show telling us how much they'd enjoyed it. It's the birthplace of Robert Burns, the poet. The main square in the town has a statue in the centre, and logically it's called Burns Statue Square. There's a tower in the high street called the Burns Tower, and just outside on the edge of town there's Burns Cottage where he was born, and opposite the big Burns Memorial. So it's quite Robert Burns orientated. We had a lovely season there, and when we finished we went to the Empire Theatre in Edinburgh. Now the Gaiety in Ayr is a tiny, tiny little theatre with a small little stage, glass stage, with lights underneath it. Absolutely charming, but tiny. The Empire Theatre in Edinburgh is huge. It's one of the Moss Empire circuit, of which the London Palladium is one of them. From then on, we played Moss Empires all over the country. And 18 months into the act, I got my call-up papers for service in the Navy, and I had to leave. Another boy was brought in to take over my place. He didn't like working in variety, and so he left. George and Eric tried to carry on as a double act, but that didn't really work either, so the act folded. After I'd come out of the Navy, or while I was in the Navy, Dorothy McCausland, who worked for Jack Hilton, left Jack Hilton and became a theatre agent in her own right. And all the time I was away, she would write to me telling me all the latest news, what was going on. And she always ended her letters, when you come out, if you're ready, let me know and I'll do everything I can to help. So when I came out of the Navy, I told her I'm ready. She sent me to see a lady called Maggie Royal. Maggie was the ballet mistress for the entire Emmy Littler organisation and was responsible for Annie Get Your Gun at the Coliseum and the touring production which I'd seen in Scotland. I went round to see Maggie and she said to me, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you at the moment. So that was that. A little while later she phoned up Dorothy and said that she was directing a new production of Annie Get Your Gun, which was going to cover all the southern counties and Ireland, and could Dorothy please recommend dancers for it? Dorothy said, what about Arthur? So Maggie said, oh no, he'd be no good, he's too small. So Dorothy said, did you see him dance? Maggie said, no, there was no point, waste of his time, waste of my time, he's just too small, there's no point. So Dorothy said, Maggie, as a personal favour to me, just see him dance and then decide. Oh, all right, if you insist, send him round, I'll see him. But I'm telling you now, he's too small. So I was sent back down to see Maggie Boyle. I went into the stage door of the Coliseum, onto the stage, and she threw everything she could at me. And I signed my contract when I left the theatre. It was 3 months before we could start rehearsing, so I was sent home. A couple of weeks later, I got a telegram saying, was I free to join the National Company immediately in Coventry as a replacement. So I went down to Coventry, joined the National Company of Annie Get Your Gun, and I was with that for the next 9 months. We closed just before Christmas and I went back home for the holiday. We had the usual family parties, and at one of them my uncle, who didn't really approve of his nephew being a dancer, said to me, so what are you going to do next? I said, I don't know. There's something coming called Kiss Me Kate. I don't know what it's about, but I might try for that. From the middle of January, they start auditioning for Kiss Me Kate. Every dancer in London that's not already working was there. There were over 400 at the auditions. And we were filtered down and filtered down and filtered down until they said to me, right, go home, we'll be in touch. And that was that. A little while later the phone rang and it was Dorothy McCausland again. Have you auditioned for Kiss Me Kate? I said, yes. She said, what happened? So I told her. She said, right. Well, I've got George Carden in the office, who is the ballet master. He's been looking all over London for you. Apparently you're on the recall list, but they've lost your details. So you've got to be at the Victoria Palace tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. That was that. So I went down to the Victoria Palace the following day, and there were 20 boys there. Again, they threw everything they could at us, and then we were lined up all along the front of the stage. She started, the choreographers started at one end, and I was the last one at the other end. So she said, when I call you out, step forward. George Carden was standing behind the line. And she said, right, the boy in black tights. George tapped him on the shoulder and he stepped forward. The boy in the yellow shirt, tap, step forward. The boy in blue jeans, tap, step forward, and so on, all the way down the line until she got to the very end. And she was in front of me and she said, peanuts. And George put both hands on my shoulders and said, you just got yourself a new name. I discovered later that Peanuts was the name given to the smallest member of every Broadway cast. Peanuts I became and Peanuts I stayed. It followed me from theatre to theatre, from show to show, from television studio to television studio. Nothing I could do would get rid of it. One day I was walking down St Martin's Lane when I bumped into Irving Davis, the choreographer. And he said to me, "Peanuts, what's your real name?" So I told him. He said, "I'm doing a television show for the BBC and I wanted you in it." And I rang up BBC booking department, told them to get me Peanuts, and they didn't know what I was talking about, so I had to get somebody else. So I thought, right, if that name's going to lose me work, then I've got to get rid of it. So then I let it be known that I would no longer answer to it. I have to say that even today, I still get phone calls from people who say, "Hi, Peanuts." The last show that I did was Bells Are Ringing. When we auditioned for it, they were told that the boys were going to be paid more than the equity rate. This was because there were a lot of small parts in the show which were going to be cast from among the male dancers. And they didn't want to have to get into new negotiations for every word that was said. So you were being paid in advance. Fine. 3 days into rehearsals, down to the Stores Bar, audition for the bits. Following day, the stage manager came onto the stage with his list of who was playing what, and he said to everybody, "There's only one name on the list, Arthur. He's playing all of them." Well, that didn't go very well in some quarters. Choreography had to be changed to make sure I was in the right place at the right time for my lines. And when we came to do a run-through of the show, the equity representative was out front and afterwards came back and said to me, "I've been renegotiating your contract." I said, "Why?" She said, "Don't be silly, you're doing far too much for what you're being paid. I've just got you a pay rise." Which was lovely. Instead of going into the chorus room at the top of the building, I was given a room on the first floor. I shared it with the ballet master and the principal dancer. There was something to be gained from having a few small parts. Unfortunately, 3 weeks into the run, I became ill and I was taken into hospital. It was tuberculosis. And the hospital I was in was Pinewood Sanatorium in Bracknell, just up the road. It was a group of wooden huts in a large green meadow. It was lovely. I was there for 10 months and I had a major operation on my lungs. When I was discharged, I was told I could go home, but I mustn't dance anymore. I had to give it up. Just before I left, the hospital almoner came to see me and she said, "You've been told you can't dance anymore." So I said, "No." So she said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know, I'll have to find something." So she said, "Isn't there anything else in the theatre you can do?" I said, "Well, the last show I was in, I did these little bits and pieces. I quite enjoyed acting." She said, "Right, that's the answer." The next thing I knew, I was surrounded by brochures and leaflets from all the drama schools in London. A friend was staying with us at the time, and he was working at the BBC, and they'd just done a programme called the A to Z of Show Business. But when it came to D for drama schools, he was the one who had to go round them all, seeing how they worked. So he said to me, "RADA sounds very good, but I don't recommend it. There, they take you in, teach you how to do it, and everybody comes out looking the same. Not a good idea." He said, "At Guildhall, you go in, and they teach you how not to do it, and everybody comes out with their own personality. I'd recommend Guildhall." Well, I auditioned for Guildhall, and I got accepted. then I had to find out how to pay for it. Someone suggested I apply to the Greater London Council. They had 3 kinds of awards. One of them just paid your fees. The second one paid your fees and gave you some expenses. The major one gave you fees, expenses and a living allowance. I got the major one. So I was okay for 2 years at Guildhall. When I arrived there, I was in the same class with Tony Holland, who created EastEnders, John Noakes, who became famous in Blue Peter, and Angela Thorne, a very lovely, talented actress that we've seen on television in various things. Apart from classes every day, we had a private tutor. And I saw him 3 times a week for half an hour. And one day he said to me, "Arthur, I want you to learn a 6-minute speech." I said, "Why?" He said, "The City of London prize." He said, "I've got you entered for it. There's no makeup, no costume, no scenery, just words for 6 minutes. And you've got to be word perfect." So I said, "Right." Well, at the time there was a magazine called Plays and Players, and every month they would publish the script of the latest new play in the West End. I just read the script for Tea House of the August Moon, which I loved. The principal character was Sakini, who introduced the play with a 6-minute speech. So I learned it. Then I started to hear what other people were doing. Shakespeare by the gallon, all the classics that you've ever heard of. And here was me doing this silly little comedy bit. So I began to think that I'd made a terrible mistake, but it was too late. I couldn't change it. It was already entered. On the day, the adjudicator was supposed to be a well-known film actress called Margaretta Scott. Unfortunately, she wasn't well, so she couldn't come. She was replaced by a character actor in films called Hugh Burden. Mr. Burden came along and just sat in the stalls and watched. When it came to be we were all wearing our Sunday best suits because we weren't allowed to wear costume. So when it was my turn, I stood on the stage with my back to the audience, waited for a moment, looked over my shoulder, saw there was somebody there, so I turned round to face them. I put my hands together, Oriental fashion, and bowed deeply. When I stood up, I said, "Lovely ladies, kind gentlemen, pleased to introduce myself, Sakini by name, interpreter by profession, education by ancient dictionary." And carried on telling the history of Okinawa for 6 minutes. When I finished, I just went back downstairs, sat in the green with everybody else and waited. When everybody had finished, we were called back into the theatre to sit with Mr. Burden. He took each piece one at a time and praised this, criticised that, constructed something else there for everybody except me. And when he got to the end, he said, "And that is why I'm giving the City of London prize to Mr. Wilman. His performance was absolutely perfect. It was brilliant. Have you got Chinese blood?" I said, "No, I'm from Manchester." He said, "I don't know what it was. There was something about it. It wasn't the way you spoke, it wasn't the way you stood, it wasn't the way you did anything. But I could have sworn you were Chinese." Sometime later, I had to go to the Mansion House to a special ceremony to get my prize. I shared the stage with the brilliant cellist Jacqueline Dupre, who was there to get the gold medal. When I left Guildhall, I did few things on television. And then I was sent to Wyndham's Theatre to do an audition. I arrived at the stage door, went up the stairs, through the pass door, onto the stage, and saw the director sitting on a bench facing the auditorium. He must have heard my feet as I came in, and he turned to look at me. When he saw me, his jaw dropped, and he said, "Oh God, you're too small." So I said, "Yeah, I am a bit titchy." He said, "We won't talk about that," and he stood up, and I could see that he was even shorter than I was. We laughed for a while, and then I was just about to leave when he said, "No, don't go. I've got some other things coming up in a couple of months. Will you come back and do those?" So I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "I come on a minute." He said, "You're here, let's do it now." So with that, he went to his briefcase, pulled out a script and gave it to me. I started to read a few lines, and he burst out laughing. He said, "Oh, for God's sake, shut up, stop it." He said, "You've got the part." And that was that. It was Sailor Beware, and I toured the whole country in that for over a year. We finished the tour in Belfast. The theatre there was in the university grounds, and because of the Northern Ireland troubles, we were all required to live in the same accommodation. Every night the university bus would come and pick us up, take us to the theatre, we'd do the performance, then he would bring us back. He didn't take us back to the house, he took us back to the harbour bar, which was a little one-storey pub built on the edge of the jetty in the harbour. It was a long, long, long bar which went from one end all the way down to the other. And every member of the staff there was teetotal. So the kettle was permanently on the board behind the bar, and tea and coffee was on tap. And there was no charge for tea or coffee. Because it was closing time when we arrived, we were all ushered into the kitchen behind the bar, where we could have a drink before we went home. The local policeman every night came in to join us and had his drink. Eventually, when we finished in Belfast, I caught the flight home. That was the end of the tour. I got home on the Sunday, and the following Wednesday the phone rang. It was my friend Morris over there. "Hello, how are you?" Chat, chat, chat. And then he said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing at the moment. I've just finished the tour. I just came home on Sunday." "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm doing the choreography for a new musical based on the life of Charlie Chaplin." I said, "Well, I like the sound of that. Where are you doing it?" He said, "Hampstead." I said, "I must try and see that." He said, "That's why I'm calling." So I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, we've been in rehearsal for 3 weeks. And quite frankly, the leading man's not going to make it, so we're going to have to make a change." "Lovely part for you." I said, "When do you open?" He said, "Tuesday." I thought, no way, that's impossible. 3 days rehearsal? No, they won't do it. So politely, I just said, "Well, if I can help in any way, just let me know." And that was that. That night, I had another phone call from the director. "I've been talking to Morris about you." So I said, "Oh yes." He said, "When can we meet?" I said, "Well, I'm just about to have my dinner." He said, "Well, I've not eaten yet either. So shall we make it 10 o'clock tonight at my flat?" I said, "Where do you live?" He said, "Parsons Green." I said, "Okay." So at 9:30, I was driving around the North Circular to Palmer's Green. When I found his house, I went upstairs to the flat. He handed me the script to look at and played some of the music. He said, "What do you think about it?" I said, "It's lovely." I said, "I absolutely love it, but I'm too old." He said, "Yes, you are, but Morris thinks you could get away with it." So I said, "Right, you think about it and let me know." And I got up and left, went downstairs. When I was halfway down the stairs, he leant over the bandage and said, "I thought, be at rehearsal tomorrow morning." And so I was at rehearsal the following morning. When I got there, the only people apart from me were Morris, the director, and the musical director. The director sat me at a little table and started to go through a particular scene in the script. There was a scene where Charlie's in New York and he's being interviewed in his dressing room by the local reporter. He'd only done a few lines when the door opened and in came this young lady. She was the young lady who was going to play the reporter, so she took over from him. So we've read a few lines and she stopped. She got up and walked away from the table. She said, "I don't believe this." She said, "I do not believe this. It's not possible." I didn't know what she was talking about. So the director said, "Well, what's the matter?" So she said, "He doesn't even know the script." So I thought, yes, I don't know the script. She said, "But I'm getting reactions from him already. I've never had that before. It's wonderful." And so we carried on. By this time, the rest of the cast had come in. Who's he? What's he doing here? And they found out. I rehearsed Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, which was officially a day off. On Sunday, Morris took me through the choreography. On Monday morning, I spent at the hairdresser's. Charlie Chaplin had dark hair and it was curly. My hair was going grey and it was straight. So first of all I was dyed black and then I was permed. I spent Monday afternoon in the theatre doing the technical rehearsal. In the evening we continued the tech. On Tuesday morning we finished the tech. Tuesday afternoon we did dress rehearsal. Tuesday night we opened and the whole thing just exploded. It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it. The following day I got a phone call. "Get here as quickly as you can and get made up and dressed. The press are coming to take photographs."
And this is you.
That's me.
Excellent.
And so the Evening Standard took them in the dressing room. The Daily Mail took that one on Hampstead Heath. They took photographs everywhere. And they were all published that week.
Arthur, would you not be more comfortable seated? It must be very tiring.
No, I'm fine actually.
Oh, good.
I'm fine. I'm too busy yakking. Have I forgotten anything, Morris?
No, you've forgotten to pay me.
Send the bill at the end of the week.
No, I don't think so. I think that's about it. Oh, it's lovely. Very nice indeed. Does anybody want to ask anything?
Yes. Does anybody want to ask me anything?
No, I think you can write
I've got something I can tell you.
What?
Before I got married, I took my friends out for a hen night.
Yes.
We saw Tea House of the August Moon.
Did you really?
So what?
So Tea House of the August Moon.
Really?
Yeah.
How wonderful.
I'd forgotten all about that till you mentioned
So I mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Was Peggy Mount with you in Sailor Beware?
Yeah.
I was reading an article about it the other day.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah. That was
in your book.
a fun play. So since then, obviously, over the time, like everybody else, I've had the odd little hiccup, little illness, and Alex was always there to look after me. Then later on, he became unwell, and it was payback time. I had to look after him. When he went, I suddenly had nothing to do, so I had to find something. So I managed to find myself 2 agents, one voice agent and one theatre agent, and they've both been busy working for me. For my voice agent, he rang me up one day and said, "Are you free next week?" I said, "Yes, why?" He said, "There's a company in Switzerland who are interested in you." So I thought, oh, right, I better check my passport if I'm going to Switzerland. I didn't go to Switzerland, I went to Soho. It was a studio in Soho that I had to go to. There was a young lady there that joined me, and there was film showing. There was a picture of the Queen interviewing Norman Tebbit, but the film was dubbed into German. It needed redubbing back into English. So I was Norman Tebbit and she was the Queen. A little while later, my agent rang me up and said, "The people in Switzerland like what you did last time, they want to use you again." So I thought, oh, that's nice. So I went along. This time I was by myself. When I got there was a table, a little like our round one, and on it there was a large microphone all wrapped up in straw to hide out any background noises. I had a large set of earphones which I had to wear, and everything I said into the microphone was heard in Switzerland, and they answered me. They told me what it was they were trying to achieve and asked my advice on how to get it. So I didn't really know what I was talking about, but I made a few suggestions. They said, "That sounds okay, let's try it." So I did it, and they came back and said, "Arthur, that was absolutely perfect, that's exactly what we're looking. Thank you so much, it's been lovely working with you. Bye-bye." And that was that. And that was all of 3 minutes. And it was very, very, very well paid. So I left the building thinking to myself, 2 of these a week would do me very nicely, thank you very much. My theatre agent rang me up and said she had a job for me. I had to go to a house in Ealing and have my photograph taken. I worked out how I was going to get. I thought, if I go to Blackwater, I can get a train that will take me straight into Ealing Broadway. Perfect. So the day before, I received a phone call. "How are you getting to Ealing?" So I said, "Well, I thought of going by train." So I said, "Wouldn't it be easier by car?" So I said, "Well, it could be." So he said, "Right, we'll send a car for you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. So the following morning, the phone rang, and the voice said, "Your car's waiting for you in the car park." So I went out, I got into this car, we drove off, and he dropped me outside the house I was to work at in Ealing, less than an hour later. I went in, walked right the way through to the back of the house, down some steps into the very, very, very large kitchen, where there was coffee on tap and rolls and butter, a round table with an elderly lady and a young lady, and an elderly man and a young man. So that was 9 o'clock in the morning. I sat there all day until 5 o'clock. And the elderly lady and the young lady had gone off together to do something and then come home. The young man stayed with me. The elderly man, I couldn't find his name on the script at all. So I said to him, what part are you playing? He said, I don't know. The producer, who was sitting next to him, said, he's you. I said, what do you mean it's me? She said, well, it's a long day. She said, if you find you can't carry on, or you get too tired, or you're unwell or anything, he's here to take over. I thought, thank God he's my understudy. I thought, well, you carry on drinking your coffee, mate, you're not going on for me. And that was that. When I was called, I had to go right to the top of the building. It was 3 flights of stairs, right to the very, very top. And on the top landing was a photographer. I had to go down 2 steps, and the young man, who was supposed to be my grandson, was holding me and supporting me as I climbed the last 2 steps. And the photographer took the pictures. When he'd done them, the producer said, right, Arthur, that's everything done now. Your car's waiting for you to take you home. I just walked downstairs, got into the car and came home. And that was it. It was like, and I was paid a fortune for it. I thought, well, that'll do. I don't mind doing that. So, anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed what I've had to say.